I look at Ollie Watkins as a big player. He's got so much potential. This is a guy that is, of course, we look at Harry Kane as the #1 striker still for England, right? Like, he's the name that pops up. But this is a guy that's got all the tools.
And what's even more impressive is that Newcastle seem to be one of the teams that you can't beat at the moment. Take a look at that. Their longest winning streak since 2004. No coincidence that it's been 9 games in a row and Alexander Isak has been in red-hot form.
Yeah. And guess what? There's an Italian that came back that made them get red hot, isn't there, Marco?
There always is one.
There is always one.
Great teams.
Yeah.
Little brain's got to be Italian.
I'll be honest.
All roads lead.
Tonali's come back. Newcastle have looked like a different team. That midfield is a force to be reckoned with.
To be in 4th place, and I know we'll talk a little bit later about the coefficients, but to see Newcastle maybe get into Champions League this season, and you look at some of the other competition, you have to give them so much credit for the way that they look. When you have a top number 9 who's putting in goals game after game, he could even break the record if he scores another 3 in a row. Yeah. There's Van Nistelrooy's ahead of him, and then Jamie Vardy as well with 11. It helps. It makes everything easy, but it is that midfield that when you have those players that are able to create chances behind you, it just makes everything go on. And I think Newcastle's a team that went under the radar. At least for me, I didn't really have them to be at the top and push for a 4th place spot once again.
There was the expectancy.
It's pretty great.
There was the expectancy.
To be this high, to be 4th right now?
Yeah,
there
especially
was
because they don't have European football. An issue was that they didn't have the depth in squad, and now Eddie Howe only has to rely on players for fewer games. And obviously, a problem with Alexander Isak has been staying fit. And obviously, he's done well this season, something that in previous seasons has been a problem for them.
Yeah, he's done well to stay fit, and whatever he's doing, whether it's the clubs have changed training regimes or wrapping him in cotton wool, it's working. And confidence is a hell of a drug, as I always say, and especially on the football pitch. He's a striker that's full of confidence right now because everything he touches is ending up in the back of the net.
Look at the first goal.
He's going to believe exactly with that deflection there, but you've got to run off that. You've got to keep that momentum going. You've got to keep that belief going, and rightly so. He's got every attribute. When you watch his game, his link-up play when he drops into pocket of space, runs in behind, great with his feet, dribbling.
It's going to be a guy really hard to keep after the summer, right?
That's exactly what I was about to ask. Controversial question. Should Newcastle qualify for top 4, so they're back in Champions League action? Do you think it's a good move for him to stay with the club, or is he going to look to other, dare I say, bigger clubs in inverted commas? Newcastle fans don't come for me.
We always have this barometer, or players always have it, right? They want to play in Champions League. If Newcastle qualifies again for Champions League, you risk, right, going someplace and not playing. But this is a guy that I think most Champions League teams would want on their roster, right?
This first one on the list, right, for you?
Well, I mean,
if you could sign any striker.
If we're talking about the way Mikel Arteta is setting up a team for him, he's brought all his Real Sociedad players to one place. Zubimendi is going to be signing with Arsenal, as reports suggest. So he just slot in there. He knows these players. Martin Odegaard, Zubimendi, Mikel Merino. There you go, Isak. The place is there.
You got to show the money first.
It depends, though.
You got to pay up.
I think qualifying for the Champions League is a massive thing to keep Isak at Newcastle. Yeah. But there's other elements that will play a part. And one, it depends on the club that may come in for him, may or may not come in for him.
You mean?
The project. And then also the PSR situation now, that plays a part for a lot of these clubs. Because if there wasn't no PSR, Newcastle United will not be a restricted club. It's a fantastically supported club. I think them being in the Champions League is what they deserve, a club of that size and how passionate the fan base is. So it's going to be what Isak wants personally, what he desires as a player, where he sees himself and what the project
He's in the perfect situation.
He's in a great situation.
He's got great teammates around him. Maybe there's bigger pastures elsewhere, but if you're still playing in the Champions League and the team wants to build...
because Newcastle is a big club. I don't want to offend anyone.
The grass isn't always greener, OK? Let's just remember that. It might be Arsenal, but it doesn't mean the grass is not always greener.
Experience with all his ages talking to you there, all his years, I mean.
Wow.
He's not going to like that one.
Wow.
Anyway, so speaking about one striker, we've got to talk about another striker who found the back of the net yesterday. I'm talking about Ollie Watkins for Aston Villa in their trip away to Everton. This was billed as a great return for David Moyes to the Premier League. It didn't get off to the dream start, as we found. And Nigel, you said that you thought Villa should have actually maybe got 3 or 4 in that game.
Yeah, they should have got 3 or 4 in that game for sure. Ollie Watkins, again, he's another striker that people are talking about. I really like Ollie Watkins. I've spoken to him a few times. Really lovely young man. Really just wants to play football and do his job. He's having the time of his life right now. Aston Villa. It hasn't been as great season as it was last year, but he's still doing his job, scoring goals. And for me, I think that he's in a great place again. You know, Villa are an absolute massive club. They're showing what they can do in the Champions League as well, surprised a lot of people. A lot of the credit for Villa has to fall to Unai Emery. Unai Emery, for me, is really showing how much of a good manager he is and tactician. He's not scared to change his side, but whatever the starting lineup is, you give credit to Villa to see how well coached they are, how organised they are as a team in and out of possession. And when you've got Ollie Watkins, who is a traditional number 9, hold-up play, runs in behind, pulling off space, natural finisher, really good finisher.
What do you feel Unai Emery needs to do to not only get more from him, but to keep him at the club too? Because a lot of clubs would like a striker, and if he is being rotated with the likes of John Duran in these coming games until the end of the season, what needs to change so that he feels like he's still maybe their number 1 and that he can get to those goal-scoring numbers that we've seen in previous seasons?
It depends what the club wants to do, right? Because you do have John Duran in the back. You know, he's been a substitute, right, for the most part. He's been a guy that's come off the bench and has scored incredible goals for this side. I think, you know, you mentioned Unai Emery. I felt like he was so hard done at Arsenal, right? Just like I feel like, and I'm glad he came back, and just like I feel like Nuno Espirito Santo was so hard done at Tottenham, right? And now these two guys have come back to the league and have shown their ability to manage big players, right? And Ollie Watkins, I look at Ollie Watkins as a big player. He's got so much potential. This is a guy that is. Of course, we look at Harry Kane as the number 1 striker still for England, right? Like, he's the name that pops up. But this is a guy that's got all the tools. I think he's only got 9 or 10 goals this year. So it's not like the most productive, but he continues to get in goal-scoring positions. And I think for a striker, Marco, that's the most important thing. Get yourself in position to score goals. But you got to give a lot of credit to Unai Emery.
And 8 assists as well. I mean, that goes under the radar, and I know we're looking at center forwards, but the fact that he has this link-up play, he makes everybody play a lot better. He's a different profile, like you mentioned, to John Duran, and I think the competition is a really good aspect within the squad, and then they'll have to determine, and you'll see what kind of offers come in. I know maybe that's even a profile that Arsenal was potentially looking at, but it's also a good situation for them to get him back scoring goals.
My small thing I would say with Ollie Watkins is I think that they should just take him out a bit and maybe give John Duran a lot more of a run, just to rest again, because sometimes you see as players where you're playing so much that only a manager and coach can see, you know what, let me take you out of the fire. Let me just rest you a little bit so you can regroup and re-energise and get that feeling again.
Well, I know a man who might have some thoughts on this. Our CBS Sports Premier League analyst, Geoff Shrives, in the building with us. I know you were at the North London derby, which we'll come on to in just a moment, Geoff. But hearing what the guys have been saying there about Ollie Watkins, how do you feel Unai Emery could get more from him?
Anita, not for the first time, I slightly disagree with Nigel, because I think Ollie Watkins is the type of player who likes to be seen as the main man, who doesn't like to be rested, who wants to play all the time. I think he's somebody who thrives on confidence as well. And the competition from Duran has been good for the team. But I just, for whatever reason, Ollie's numbers are slightly off this season. And, I mean, Duran nearly left the club. It would have been interesting to see how Ollie Watkins fared if he didn't have that level of competition there. So, but what I don't disagree with, what the whole panel says, is what a top player he is. He's he's got so much to contribute. And again, as Nigel says, as a person, he's absolutely top drawer. He's very, very popular. He's a really humble guy. So there will be no shortage of takers for Ollie Watkins, but I cannot imagine in any world that Aston Villa would let him go.